The challenge is the corporate-controlled, profit-oriented inclination of our media. People are chasing clicks. They are chasing view eyeballs. If journalism is supposed to be something that puts the public interest at its center, right now we have profit at its center. Journalists used to be a lot more confrontational and be a lot more interested in investigating, really digging deeper, and weren't always interested in sort of just getting close to power. And I think that we've lost that.
Hello, and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast, bringing to you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm Daniel W.K. Lee, poet, author, and salt on watermelon stan.
And I'm Kate, your resident high hard femme. We're your co-hosts on today's Queercast journey. In this episode, we are talking to Rodrigo Brandão, a Brazilian-born communications professional working on social justice, climate, and environmental issues. Rodrigo previously was the Senior Director of Communications at the Intercept News Organization and freelanced for the Marshall Project, Al Jazeera, and other journalism and social justice organizations. Most recently, Rodrigo handled the New York press for the No Kings March. Welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Daniel. Excited to be here.
We're excited to. I'm particularly excited to have you. I've known you for many years.
I know. I'm glad that you got that out of the way. No one has aged.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about your movement work, I want you to tell us or our listeners a little bit about yourself, about growing up in Brazil, coming to the U.S., and kind of how it's informed your work now and how you even see your home now in the U.S.
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I was born and raised in Brazil. I basically lived in Rio de Janeiro for the first 20 years of my life. And I moved here when I was like just 4 months before I turned 21. So to go to college, I got a scholarship to study film. And it was my passion. I was like a film nerd. One of my first like gay experiences I've ever had was like watching My Wedding Banquet in a movie theater alone. It's a funny story because I literally thought I was going to meet the love of my life if I just gathered the strength to go see this film alone. So I like left and I was like, it would be so amazing. And I walked in, great film. No one even saw I was there, but it was like, but yeah, film was really my thing. And that's what brought me here. I actually started my communication studies in Brazil. I ended up doing a double major in 4 years. So I have a degree in film and then another in art history. And I moved to New York City in August of 2001. So right before 9/11. And that's really kind of like the beginning of my kind of identity as an immigrant, as an activist or whatever I am. I don't even know if I'm an activist. I'm more of a social justice person, I think. But yeah, I think that moving to New York to sort of start this internship it was also like the internship of my dreams. I really had I interned at Sony Pictures Classics, which is the distributor of all these foreign language films. And it was a very hard to get internship. So that was great. So I moved to New York with I'm going to intern at this place. It's going to be magical and I'm going to have the time of my life. And then major terrorist attack happens. Then I realized that I can't survive on $5 an hour. And so history begins. I moved to New York. I didn't know anybody. I literally Googled gay Brazilians because I wanted to meet people that I could talk to. And I ended up finding this queer Brazilian group called Brazilian Rainbow Group. I don't even think it exists anymore. And
I remember.
Yeah. I started doing stuff with them and through that, I ended up being connected with all these other queer groups. And I remember 2 months after I joined this group, there was an offer from ALP, the Andre Lorde Project, to do a leadership meeting. And then the guy who ran the group was like, I don't want to go to this. And I was like, oh, let me go. And it's like, okay, go. So 2 months after I joined this group, I was going on a leadership, quote, retreat. And then I met a lot of people there. And I think it was through those circles that I met you, Daniel. And that I met some of the friends that are still my friends to this day. And it was sort of also the beginning of my political life in the United States, sort of how I started learning about social justice, LGBTQ history, from an American perspective. And then also as 9/11, the war on terror began, as the sort of attacks on Muslims and all this sort of renewed racism and xenophobia started kicking in the US, that was also sort of when I started to sort of, okay, what do I do? What am I doing here? Why am I here? Yeah. So that's kind of the beginning of my life in New York.
Interesting. And I love that you say, I'm not an activist, I'm a social justice person. I'm curious what that means to you.
Yeah, good question. I say that maybe first and foremost because I really respect activists. And it's funny, the people I'm surrounded by activists, and they are not only the smartest people I know, but they're also incredibly pragmatic. They are strategists. They can talk to anyone. They can talk to far-right Republicans if they had to. They don't that much, but it's just people that really can read a room and can sort of strategize, can go for realistic goals without losing sight of the sort of big dreams. I don't know. So I just have a lot of respect for activists, and I know the skill. I have a sense of what the skill is. And I think especially organizing is a really kind of a magical thing to sort of, and organizing in a kind of democratic ways that we want things to be organized from the ground up, like really listening to the base, listening to what communities need and want, not just what you think is best for them, So I think that kind of stuff requires a particular skill that I don't have. I think these people are they're just great. And I'm, like I said, surrounded by them. I work for them, with them. So I'm always learning. I think in a way, like I've definitely picked up some skills from them. But I think my contributions have been more sort of on the media side, sort of either from the communication side, like thinking about how do we engage this with, traditional media? How do we translate this to the media landscape? And then messaging with making films and videos. So I think that's really my specialty, if I have any.
You're offering kind of the perfect transition. So I'd love to know more about that contribution. And you recently worked on the No Kings protests and the incredible coverage that those got. How did you get involved with that?
I think that really started because I've been helping other campaigns in New York. I've been involved in other climate work in New York and social justice work in New York. So it was sort of an organic thing that people that were involved in that campaign or sort of the core group, they really came to me, frankly, 5 days before, and we need help. And I was like, let's do this. And lots of things didn't happen the way that they could have happened if I had a month but also I think we really did a great job, and we ended up doing a press briefing that really got picked up by every major network. And Mark Ruffalo showed up, Ilana Glazer, and we really, I think, were able to create a situation for them that they felt comfortable with. So I ended up contributing. And I think that last year I helped folks that were organizing this campaign to basically pressure Citibank to stop investing in new fossil fuel projects. It was called Summer of Heat. Yeah. And it was basically like a series of sustained actions, sometimes 3 to 4 actions a week in front of Citibank in New York for 4 months, really. And also with different coalitions with really kind of with migrants. We at one point brought migrants from the Gulf South, states. So we were really, the folks that organized this really did an amazing work in terms of kind of putting together a broad coalition of groups and people that wanted to come and support this. But it went really well. And I think that my sense is that it's not the largest or one of the longest sustained climate political actions ever. It was really, and we really pressured Citibank to explain their greenwashing and also talk about how can you sort of say that you were a friendly, sustainable bank while also putting billions of dollars towards all these new fossil fuel projects, mind you. We're not, and it's so funny to sort of when you do that kind of work and to see how other people in the far right paint this caricature of leftist demands. We were very explicit that we were talking about new fossil fuel projects. These were very hard demands, and we knew that they were pretty big demands, but they were not impossible in the sense that it could be done. And the far right kept saying that we want to all banks to stop all fossil fuel projects right now, cut oil from, and we're just no, we're not stupid. We're not no one is asking for you to turn off the gas, your local gas station. And throw out cars into a precipice. But, it's to the right's and to the oil company's advantage to paint the right or the left or climate activists in this way. Oh, you guys are demented.
Right.
Yeah, we got our media people, they got theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking around this kind of idea of messaging, which you kind of have, you have a great experience in that. Mentioned before, you worked at The Intercept. And for those who don't know what The Intercept is, it's a news media organization that's been started by Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, and kind of took off. We're right in the wake of like the Snowden revelations, which kind of was huge, obviously. Despite kind of like this, I would say, more recent like blossoming, we'll say, of like other organizations, not like Zateo or Teo.
Zateo, yeah.
Yeah, Zateo. Dropsite, obviously, from Jeremy and Ryan Grimm. I'd love to get your thoughts on the challenges of what we might call like left-wing media to kind of counter like mainstream, or even mainstream also kind of being right-wing or right-leaning narratives. Just big picture, like your thoughts, like why doesn't a show, aside from, I think the obvious answer would be money, but like why doesn't a show like Democracy Now!, which has a lot of cred among left-leaning or left-wing individuals, like why doesn't that show or other kinds of like media organization have the same kind of presence or influence over the news media landscape and how it shapes like discourse politically or socially?
Yeah, really good question. The challenge is that there are many. One, I think it's easy to say it's sort of the corporate controlled, like profit oriented inclination of our media landscape. People are chasing clicks, they are chasing view eyeballs, and in a way that's really not productive to journalism as a kind of effort. If journalism is supposed to be something that puts the public interest at its center, right now we have profit at its center. So that's like a basic way of that I at least think about what's wrong with the media landscape today. I think with that, and not maybe just because of that, but with that comes this the phenomenon of like access journalism. It's the fact that there was a time, there was this journalists used to be a lot more confrontational and be a lot more interested in investigating, really digging deeper, and weren't always interested in just getting close to power, and I think that we've lost that to a certain extent, to the point that when you have journalists like Intercept, like Ryan Grimm, Mehdi Hassan, who aren't afraid to just call it like it is, to just like confront power, to really run stories that aren't comfortable to anybody, to Republican, Democrats, Independents, like they really just and it doesn't mean that they're not politically savvy. There are fewer people who are savvier than Ryan Grimm, but he's not going to not run a story about someone in the Senate because they're independent or Democrat. It's just not going to happen. That's not how they're thinking about their work. So, and they're not the only ones obviously doing that. There are The Nation. There's a whole you could call it leftist or more, I'm forgetting the word for this kind of like investigative journalism. It was like done in the 60s and I'll remember. But it's a kind of more, leftist leaning orgs and publications, but they are struggling with funding. Democracy Now! Is definitely one of them. And they are also in a scenario that doesn't value that kind of approach to journalism. They're considered like in their best day punks. Oh, that Ryan Grimm. And in the worst day, they're like, well, you're unhelpful, aggressive. There's a list of adjectives that are used to describe. Anyway, lots of things. So, and that's not true. And you might disagree of their perspective. And you might disagree of the way that they report a certain story. They certainly made mistakes in their lives. Every journalist does. But I think that kind of approach to journalism and to finding a story, finding scoops, and that kind of approach to power is getting rarer and rarer. Mm-hmm. And it's also not something that funders are really interested in being a part of, because it puts them in the middle of different, very difficult situations and conversations, because they can't, they have to respond to these moments where they're not advancing a particular ideology that they might be interested in. And at The Intercept, there was never any interference from funders. And I know because I was there, I was part of the great thing about working at The Intercept is that it was this relatively small newsroom. So comms was not like this separate thing on the side. I was part of editorial meetings. Sometimes probably spoke more than I should have, but no, it's like definitely was allowed to like sort of say whatever I wanted to say. Obviously, I wasn't making editorial decisions, but I know that there was zero pressure from funders. And even if there was, none of them would have taken it. It would the opposite actually would have had the opposite effect. But I do think that's rare and also puts funders in this kind of complicated situation because they're expected to advance. Even in a kind of nonprofit world, you're expected to, what is your theory of change? What is your 3-year game plan? I think that's the mentality that sort of funders often have. And journalism sort of works in its own way and has its own pacing. And it's invested in a different set of values. So you really can't think of journalism in the same way. It's also just like expensive. And also to produce that kind of journalism where you're not just sort of sending a reporter out to write 5 stories a week or 15 stories a week because you need hits and you need like and you need like lists and whatever it is that's going to attract eyeballs. The reporters at The Intercept would sometimes spend like weeks or months like digging a particular piece, would go travel nationally and internationally, they would kill stories that if they thought the stories were not solid. Like I thought that they most of the time were doing things the way that they should have been. That was the only newsroom that I worked at that point. And I thought, oh, I'm sure everyone works like this. It's not true. It's actually an exception. So yeah, I think the whole world is moving into this kind of like right-wing space, conservative space. I think that's just the nature of capitalism. It's just sort of taking us to this place. Like even if you just sort of, it's where this ocean, the water is taking us. So to just sort of stay in the same place or go a little bit in the other direction, you have to put a lot of effort. Even I think newsrooms that aren't necessarily like right-wing or conservative, it gets very hard for them to do like work that's really challenging power in a kind of meaningful, fundamental way.
We just have to take a short break. So everyone, please stay tuned as we continue our conversation with Rodrigo Brandão.
Tired of the same old advocacy advice? Get ready for a fresh perspective with The Idealist, the monthly newsletter from A Great Idea. We're the queer-owned agency that's been sparking change since 2015. Each month, The Idealist delivers a unique and inspiring approach to advocacy building straight from innovators across the country. Fuel your passion and discover new ways to grow, empower, and activate your community. Subscribe to The Idealist. It's your monthly dose of inspiration. Sign up for free at agreatidea.com/idealist. That's agreatidea.com/idealist.
Are you looking for a way to make your philanthropy more meaningful and more aligned with social justice? Meet New Moon Network. New Moon helps individuals, institutions, and foundations move their dollars where they matter most, into grassroots movements advancing the rights and self-determination of people in the sex trade. If you're a funder ready to move in solidarity with sex workers and survivors, this is your invitation to come learn about our movement and help fund meaningful advancement for sex workers' rights. Reach out to us today at contact@newmoonfund.org and take the next step toward funding with purpose.
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast, and I'm Daniel, and here with my co-host, Kate. I'm talking to Rodrigo Brandão. I'm just going to go back a little to what we were talking about earlier and thinking about like social media and as a disruptive, but perhaps also a amplifying space for media and news and messaging. Obviously, it's as kind of furtive and fruitful as any kind of space. But I kind of wonder, like, how do like organizations and nonprofits also kind of use that space to kind of message to the people that they're serving or their kind of constituents or the people that they want to affect or influence? Like, what aren't they kind of getting right in order to kind of shape the conversation around the issues that they're working on?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can give you a very personal answer to that question. And it's sort of based on my experience working in climate spaces. And I think I'm sort of I'm sort of trying to frame myself as a person that sort of both sort of works at this kind of level, kind of maybe abstract narrative level of messaging and thinking of distribution channels and audiences and et cetera, but also has like more than one leg or side of my body, whatever it is, like on the organizing side. Because I think that often what you have obviously in activism or in everything in life, you have this movement where things get unequally valued, right? Like where like sort of mainstream media sometimes gets more value than doing the organizing work in a local town or setting up a local group meeting of organizing your neighbors. Like, right? Oh, that's cute. But really, what's really important is just to get a hit on CNN. No one ever said that. But I think that I think it's important to really avoid that and really to think of sort of the offline and online as like part of one goal, and to really not have a movement that doesn't recognize that there are multiple hotspots, that we need multiple hotspots and multiple strategies to really accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, to have meaningful social change. You can't really do anything without social media. So like also to say, well, let's forget the internet. Let's just take to the streets. Well, great. But like, it would be very ill-advised to not use the tools of like digital organizing that are in our hands. Except that what you sometimes have is entire organizations that are only thinking about creating kind of like audience profiles and Facebook ads and Twitter ads. And it's just, well, that's not going to solve it either. You need a theory of change. You need connections with local, national, regional groups. You need respectful connections with those groups. So you need to really understand what their goals are and try to articulate like small and broad coalitions to get those objectives, to even think what those objectives are and what are the things that we can work together. And then you need this sort of like narrative strategy work. You need sort of, how are we telling this story of this campaign, of this movement in many arcs, right? And like in a kind of quick arc, in a sort of medium arc, in a long arc. And how do you do that without leaving in a way that's effective, that really speaks to people's living conditions and doesn't throw other people under the bus? That's not what we're seeing, for instance, not a lot, but there were occasions in the climate movement, for instance, where you'd see people putting out climate messages that are basically like, oh, we need to solve the climate crisis because otherwise these immigrants are going to come over. Like, that's why we should really fix the climate crisis, because we don't want all those immigrants coming. And it's, please don't do that. It's just like, you don't have to also jump on a bandwagon, just get your message in. Or in the middle of like all this national security talk, sort of have conversations like, it's really important to spend money on climate change and military, like sort of. So how do we tell these stories without supporting other structures that we know are bad, or other narratives that actually throw other kinds of people under the bus, like that criminalizes more people? Like, how do you defend immigrants without saying there are good and bad immigrants? If you don't work and accept minimum wage and don't let us exploit you, you're a bad immigrant and you can go to jail and you can. So those are not easy questions. I don't want to also say I know exactly how to do that. Hire me, but like, it's not at all. I don't know, but not knowing what not to do is part of it. How should I not talk about this? It's already part of the conversation. So I don't know. I think that, and that should really inform, I think, the social media and the digital and the online conversation too. I think we're over the sort of canceling period. I think that only the right really talks about the left as a canceling parade, like canceling each other into infinity. But how do you like change how do you tell people, hey, let's not talk about this. Let's talk in this other way. You don't want to throw these other people on. How do you call people in, right? In a way how do you call movements in? And I don't know how to do this. Like today at work, I called something out. I called someone out. I didn't call them in. But just as a reminder, we should try to do that as much as possible, because that's how we build coalitions. And often that person that makes a mistake or sort of hadn't really examined a point of view or hadn't really understood how their narratives are potentially causing other problems over there, they can become an ally. And I think we do need broad coalitions. So yeah, that doesn't exactly answer your question. I do think the narrative work is becoming it's been for a while now, like in certain circles, like very a cool thing to do. I think it can be powerful in some instances, but I think only when it's really connected to real groundwork, to like real, like it's nothing without something to back it up, without an organization that really understands, has an audience, has a community that it's serving, has very clear, sophisticated goals. Doing narrative work for those orgs and for those campaigns is a lot of fun. It's wow, this is a really, because the ideas are already there and you just have to sort of distill them and kind of rearrange them in a way that's interesting. But otherwise you're just, and I think like you and I, Daniel, we discussed a lot about marriage equality, for instance, like how there were many instances in which the movement was really set on getting marriage equality passed and sort of achieving those goals. Fine. Can you do that without throwing trans people under the bus? Can you do that without sort of reaffirming like sort of the military and doing that without questioning some complicated things about the military that need to be questioned, hate laws? And so I think that and hopefully we learned a lot from it, right? I think that also even the way that the dire situation of the trans movement now, well, no, the trans movement is doing really great. Like trans people are super organized and doing beautiful work. I think that the queer folks like gay men and like all of other people haven't really showed up in the way that we should show up for the trans movement. And that's why we're now where we are in terms of they're again, like being, I think that trans people are again vulnerable in terms of legislation in this country and in terms of being expelled from military and from jobs that they want to keep and be a part of. So, and you could really make an argument that really started with when we left them behind around 20 years ago or 15 years ago around marriage, when we were so set on marriage equality, on sort of normalizing a vision of queer life. And now who's paying the price again for that? Like it's in part trans people, I think.
So I would love to go back and pull on a little bit of what you were talking about around the use of narrative. And I was sharing with you a moment ago, I came up as a community organizer. And I feel like, especially as a young community organizer, was really taught that narrative is kind of, it draws people in. And the use of a personal story is like public awareness about your issue. But it was always a really flat way of thinking about narrative and art. And I'm curious, especially coming from Brazil, which has just such a different culture and different relationship to activism and art. I'm curious how you think, what is the role of art and narrative in social change beyond just the quick quote at the top that gets you to open the article before they transition to the quote unquote expert?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and not an easy question. And I think also you right away, you touched and exemplify one of the largest problems with that is that sometimes the movement thinks of artists as like illustrators, like they bring artists in, so, you know, when everything is done. And so, can you do this design for me? Can you do this image, cartoon logo? And that's not, artists are creative and really creative geniuses. Like they're creative people that should be part of the entire process, right? Like we should bring them in to really think about how the messaging comes across. And hopefully their aesthetic can inform everything that we do, not just like the image that comes up, that shows up when you click on the ad or when you click on the Evite. It should be really thought of as, how do you build an experience? I hate to, this is sort of like a product folks use that experience, that word experience a lot. So I don't mean that way, but I mean like, how do we make the entire experience of being an activist and being in community with activists, like beautiful, joyful, like an artful experience, something that really nurtures people as opposed to just drains them or makes them feel like they're not doing enough or gets them angry. Because art is nurturing. Art is beautiful and joyful. It's not the only way to make art. I think art can be angry and art can be heavy as well. But how do we bring artists and sort of let them be part of the whole process and learn from them in terms of building aesthetic experiences that are sort of larger than just a specific meeting or a moment, that kind of inform a whole. Art also sort of provides a perfect background and scenario for community experience, right? Like it's sort of, and I don't mean just making art together, but definitely that, like sort of doing painting together, doing work together is also beautiful. But also I think just like an art piece or a show or whatever it is that an art create can really sort of make a community experience, can improve the experience of a community, can improve how people relate to each other because they're going to be surrounded by beauty, or they're going to be embedded in a context of an aesthetic context, like they're going to be embedded in beauty. So yeah, I think artists need to be brought in early on, that they need to be listened to, and they should be informing our politics, not just sort of illustrating our politics. And because we need our politics to be joyful, and we need to go of these tiny discussions about whatever it is that we're discussing this week that is like super tiny and irrelevant. Like, I think artists can also take us out of our own heads. Wow, let's look at this together. Let's sort of experience this, take this in, and really kind of and also we talk a lot about emotions, right? Using our emotions in our politics and let us feel something, whether it be anger but like art really helps with that too, I think. And we know that because we all seek art in that context, whether it's music. And I think that's something that I think Brazil does it differently. And I probably understand better the way that Brazil does it. It's just music is everywhere. You don't have to sort of invite a musician to come to it. It's just like they'll come by. It just shows up and they'll have drums and they'll have a guitar and it would just happen like organically. And I think that it's also about a kind of flexibility and like a more kind of elastic way of sort of engaging with social spaces too. I think it allows for, in a city like New York, we're not even supposed to step on the grass, and it's harder to create art because you're just like, okay, you have this little box here. You got to make an art in this bathroom. And well, you know what I mean? And in Brazil, it's just like, whatever. You can just like paint any mural. But I think we can all, and it's something that we're actually I'm talking with organizers about, sort of how do we bring artists early? How do we let this really inform the experience? And also the messaging doesn't have to be only like in this kind of direct language. It can be poetic. It can be open. It should be poetic. It should be open. It should be expansive. It shouldn't be just like, we want this right. It should be like, we want beauty. Like we want to live well together. I don't know. It's just, I mean, Dan should really talk about poetry and not me, but, or you, Kate, as well. But like, I mean, poetry is something that really fascinates me, and I don't read enough poetry, and I know zero about it, and I still read it. I never took a poetry course. I was never told how to read poetry. I know I read it wrong. I'm sure I don't engage with it in a proper way, but like, I just buy random poetry books sometimes, and I just find it so relaxing. And I don't know.
I don't know if there's a way to read it wrong. I think maybe there's just, some of the things that you didn't hit, you didn't grasp. Sometimes the register is high and you're like, I'm not quite getting, or there's a little bit of opacity just because of like syntax or the way things are being phrased. But I mean, I think for me, at least, like successful poetry or just like successful art, like communicates something and provides an experience one way or the other, like emotionally. Particularly, I'm interested in the emotional aspect of it. And maybe that emotional aspect is kind of at the gateway to a narrative or communicate a kind of a political idea, just unbeknownst to you or whatever. I mean, this is not that different, I think, to the language of film, which you're a filmmaker. We can kind of talk about that. Like, there is essential about any kind of art is communication. And I think fundamentally that they align that way. Maybe the kind of nomenclature or the language might be a little different, but we're all kind of like trying to say something, as it were. And speaking of saying things, like, tell us about filmmaking. Like, how did you become so passionate about it? And you worked in film and like the business side, you worked at Kino Lorber. You helped establish a cinema slate, right? Which focused on Latin American cinema. So you kind of done work to kind of platform Latin American filmmakers in film. Tell us a little bit about your journey there, and where is it now outside of like the social movement kind of like work that you're doing?
I guess I just want to say too, because I think maybe also my point was that there is a knowledge to art, right? Like, I totally agree with you, but I also think that there is good poetry and bad poetry. There's a knowledge to filmmaking. And not to say that there's a list of good films and bad films, and you should not like bad films. You should only like good films. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it's a skill. It's a knowledge. There's a history to it. These are specific mediums that have been doing different things. There are movements within these mediums. And the same with poetry. And I think it would be great to get people like you who study poetry to bring poetry at that high level to movements, and bring filmmaking at that high level to movements, and bringing theater, because those things are incredibly complex, and it's hard to make good theater, good film, good poetry, and let the people who know how to do it. So I think we just need to sort of build the space for them to come in and take it over, I think. And I think for me, I mean, film was always kind of my escape and my little church and and it's also a rabbit hole. It's once you start. I remember going to this VHS like rental stores, and I think I really became like a cinephile was when I went to, there was this little store like hidden like near my apartment, my home in Brazil. And they would let you rent, like you could rent up to 20 films. And it was like a real, like $1, let's say, per film. And you could keep as many days as the number of films that you would rent. So I would leave with 20 tapes, like barely, it's like literally dropping tapes. And I would bring the tapes home and I would copy them. I would make copies of tapes because I wanted to keep the films. And I was like, just like watching films like compulsively. And then you learn, wow, this is like a whole world. There's like people in Poland making films about death penalty. I remember when I saw like a short film about killing, it just completely blew my mind. It's just like, who is Kieslowski? And then you just look it up and like, oh, this film actually was so powerful that it helped banish and that capital punishment in Poland when it came out. It was like, so like you realize, oh, this actually has consequences. You can make something that is so powerful that it can actually move people to do certain things. I don't think that's the point of art. Make people do A, B, get them to put something in their basket. And it's not like that. But I think that definitely it moves people in certain directions and you can get people to reflect on things. So, I mean, I think that honestly, I've always liked the sort of distribution, commercial side and marketing side of filmmaking too. And I really wanted to work on it. I also was passionate about cinematography. I am still passionate about it. So I think all things being equal, I probably would have become a cinematographer after school if I had the option. But I wanted to stay in the US. I had my first boyfriend. I was like, I'm going to stay in the US and we're going to marry and whatever. And yeah. And then I was like, I needed always about marriage. Yeah. I actually don't think I was thinking about marriage. But anyway, like I wanted to stay in the US and I needed a visa. I needed someone to sponsor me to stay. So I was like, go and do distribution work and try to get a job that way. And I did. And I got a job and I was able to stay. So mission accomplished. But it's also, I think that even if I had done cinematography work, if I started working in film sets and had taken that route, I still would have had that side that wasn't fulfilled. So I don't even regret it necessarily, the path I took. But I've never really stopped sort of thinking about making films but I think that the more I also sort of was introduced to kind of experimental cinema and to kind of the film festival circle and like academic film circles, like I started also thinking of film more outside this sort of shopping mall, commercial theater, like Marvel movies spaces. And I realized that the more interesting spaces are this kind of smaller, are the film festivals that show these odd films that don't get distributed in most. And that's why I wanted to work in distribution, actually, because you get to work in the small companies that do pick up and distribute it and find audiences for films that are weird and rare and kind of that need to be seen, I think. And I did that, and I did that with Cinemas Late when I released like a bunch of Brazilian films here. So, but I kept making little things, and I am now. I'm sort of working on 2 short documentary projects. One is about an activist of all things, and it's really about civil disobedience and sort of this he's a musician, is sort of his own relationship to activism and to sort of coming out gay, like late in his life, and why is it taking on? Why is it being arrested every week, like protesting Citibank and Zionists? And I'm working also on another short film I'm really interested in housing, like issues. I mean, obviously if you're in New York, you'd not be like shocked by like rents and like housing injustice in this city. So I ended up getting involved with, I got 2 fellowships in the kind of housing urban space. And I've developed a couple of video projects with them. And I'm now with this work called Housing Narrative Lab. And I'm working on a short documentary about the Red Hook port, the development plans. So they're trying to turn the port in Red Hook into build housing there, basically, a sort of, and obviously luxury housing. Like build these gigantic towers. They're going to sell for millions of dollars because you get to view, you get like a Statue of Liberty view, but it's really not what the neighborhood needs. The neighborhood doesn't have any kind of like infrastructure, doesn't even have subways. The public housing there is in terrible condition. That really needs to be the focus. And they really should get more public housing there and not more luxury housing. It's not what EDC wants to do. And there's a whole community organizing, trying to fight it. And also there's this it's the only port, that's working port in Brooklyn that could still be developed and could have manufacturing jobs there. We should have a resiliency plan in that neighborhood, and because there's too many, traffic is already impossible, and there's like literally 10,000 Amazon trucks a day in that neighborhood polluting the whole place and making transportation even harder. They could be bringing some of those packages and products in via the waterways. And it's also really a film, I hope, and a project about like, why doesn't New York develop its ports? Like, why are we turning our sort of port area into like luxury housing? And like, we are an island. Like, we should have working ports. We should have a better relationship with water. So those are 2 things that I'm working on right now. And yeah, and that kind of gets me going, just sort of like it's sort of important for me to be creative in some way. To have a tiny part of my life that's still creative and still kind of grabbing a camera and going somewhere. It just makes me happy.
Well, both of those sound absolutely incredible, but we do need to take a short break here. Stay with us because we'll be back in a minute to share some fun facts plus a speed round of questions to get to know you.
Hey, nonprofit leaders, change makers, and community builders. If you're navigating growth, equity concerns, or just trying to make your work better, you need to know about Orange Cap Consultation, a boutique consulting firm led by me, Melody KG. Orange Cap offers community-rooted consulting to help mission-driven teams move with clarity, equity, and have a real impact. Whether it's strategic planning, meeting facilitation, leadership development, or helping you design community programs, I've got the experience and the heart to help you build what's next. Learn more at www.orangecapconsultation.com.
Community organizers, are you ready to unlock new levels of impact? A Great Idea is offering a fantastic collection of free downloadable tools, helpful white papers, and so much more. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency empowering change since 2015, we're dedicated to providing you with the resources you need to grow, empower, and activate your communities. Discover insightful knowledge and practical tools to enhance your work. Explore A Great Idea's free resources today at agreatidea.com/insights. That's agreatidea.com/insights.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride, where we're talking with Rodrigo Brandão. I'm Kate, and I'm here with my co-host Daniel. Okay, so time for speed round questions where we get to know you even better.
Mm-hmm. This is where we ask you some questions, and try not to spend too much time thinking about it. Just give the first answer that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Okay, just give me a second. I am. Go for it.
Okay, good. Inhale, exhale. Yes. Okay. First question. If you had to sing karaoke right now, what song would it be?
I Will Survive.
Good answer.
You told me not to think, so
that's great.
Wow.
That's gonna be way more than you want to know.
I think it might answer the next question that we had.
Next question. What's your favorite gay anthem?
Oh gosh. Any Kylie Minogue song can get you out of my head.
Nice.
Yeah. That's a good song.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of songs, what's the last song, movie, or book that made you cry?
Oh gosh. So I watched this Steve Soderbergh film. It's like a haunted house movie that I thought was like really fascinating. Presence. Yeah, it's called Presence.
Ooh.
It made me cry.
That sounds
Go
amazing.
figure. Yeah.
What do you wear to bed?
What do I wear to bed? a mix of like naked to just like fully clothed sometimes. Yeah, it's a mess.
Depending on the weather or how cold the air conditioning is.
Yeah, or just sometimes I get really lazy and I'm like, I'm just going to sleep like this. You know? And it's just...
Okay. If you could have sex with a celebrity or any celebrity, who would it be? And what do you think it would be like?
Oh, gosh. Oh, my God. Okay, I think Bradley Cooper. Sorry. I just because I actually saw him in person once and I didn't think he was attractive. And then I saw him in person and I was like, whoa, this man is interesting. So, yeah, it would be tender. I don't know.
I love it. Question mark. Tender?
Yeah, I know. Maybe. Yeah.
So I feel like every celebrity encounter for me is you're not the size I thought you were. Was Bradley Cooper the size you thought he was going to be?
No, not at all. And that's exactly what shocked. For some reason, I thought he was like a short man and he's like tall and just like very proportionate. And I don't know, and this smile, that's just like, what is that? And kind of looking very, just kind of easygoing, you know? Yeah. I mean, not the only person, and Pedro Pascal for sure, but that's who wouldn't.
That's everyone's answer right now.
Yeah, I know. So I want to be.
Yeah, what's tall too? You're like 6'3", so like your height?
He was kind of my height, and I don't even think of myself as tall, but I had just imagined him as like 5'4" for some reason. Like, you know? Yeah, I don't know. So I suddenly am like, wait, you're Bradley Cooper? Like
you're coming from the short kings. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Totally. I'll take that. I love short guys. Yeah.
Noted. Next question. Have we ever actually had a hot president?
No. Sorry.
I agree. What's the one item you can't live without?
Well, Lula is a hot president. So maybe not in the US, but Brazil. Say that again. An item that I can?
Yeah, one item that you can't live without.
Fan. I really love fans.
Clack fan.
No, not even, but sure. Yeah, clack fan. But I'm like addicted to the sound of fans, and it's been a problem in every relationship. I will want to sleep with a fan on or a fan near me. And
the white noise situation.
It's not even white noise. I just need the wind too.
Okay.
So it's like a whole thing. Yeah. And I need cameras. I like cameras.
Fans and cameras. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Correct.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad.
What was your AIM handle?
Oh, yo. Yes, it was RPM Brandão.
RPM. Okay.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
It sounds butch.
Kate, no, it wasn't. Kate, you don't even know what that is, do you? Do you know what an AI?
Handles?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I am definitely of the AIM GeoCities era.
Okay. Wait, it's AOL, right?
Yeah. It's AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God.
And if you made that bring noise right now, we'd all jump for our laptops.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Most overlooked Brazilian dish.
Overlooked Brazilian dish. I guess it's feijoadas are just look wonderful. Like veggie feijoadas without like meat are just really great, and people don't really give it a chance.
Sounds excellent. And then finally, what's the best place to get Brazilian food in New York City?
So there are 2 Brazilian restaurants like near my home. I actually had lunch at one of them today. They're not the best, but they're like dear to me. So they're the ones I like. What is that churrascaria place? It's like a really famous one. It's really good. It's just so expensive.
The one in Midtown? Yeah.
Yeah. Fogo de Chão is really good. Yeah. Fogo de Chão is like a steakhouse chain as well. Those are both really good.
Well, thank you for those. And thank you so much, Rodrigo, for joining us. And thank you for painting such a beautiful picture of what it means to organize out of beauty and joy. I think all of us, especially right now, can live in that visual for a little bit and think about more ways that we can make our spaces more beautiful, more emotional, more connective, and the ways that we need to bring in art right now to do that. So thank you for gifting us that image and that vision. Where can people find out more about you or follow you and your work?
I guess I'm on Twitter. Brandão NYC, terrible Twitter handle or X handle. And I guess I have a website. It's Rodrigo, just my name, rodrigobrandão.com. I don't put everything there, but there's just a short bio and a couple of samples of things I've done like a long time ago. But yeah. And I have a video of Dan that I need to put out one day, like shot in 2003 or something.
It's so wild.
Well, we're very excited to follow your short projects and look for a video where we're going to talk about 2003 Dan next time.
Oh, God.
Thank you,
My
Kate.
goodness.
That was such a lovely conversation. Really appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, thank you so much. I'm your co-host, Kate, and you can follow me and find more at reframehealthandjustice.com or on Instagram at Harm Reduction Femmes.
And I'm your co-host, Daniel W.K. Lee, author and poet. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Daniel W.K. Lee, Lee, and on Instagram at Strong Plum. Remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check out our site at powerbeyondpride.com.
Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at agreatidea.com.
This episode was produced by Shane Lucas. Smita Sarkar was the project developer. Our editor is Jarrett Redding, with support from Ian Wilson.
We are both part of this podcast's awesome host team, and we invite you to send in your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com.
And check out our new episodes each week, and we look forward to queer change making with you next time. Thank you from all of us at Power Beyond Pride.
Hey, this is Sean Aaron, he, him, his, and I'm here to tell you about Them Boys Podcast. I'm the host of Them Boys Podcast, and as a Black queer trans man, the podcast amplifies the voices of other trans men of color as we share our transition stories. The podcast not only amplifies the voices of trans men of color, but it raises awareness and conversations around our lived experiences. You can listen to the podcast by going to themboys.org/podcast. That's DEMBOIS.org/podcast. I hope to have you join us on the next episode.
Your mission is vital. Let a great idea help you magnify its impact. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency serving nonprofits, healthcare, and education nationwide since 2015, we're dedicated to growing, empowering, and activating your advocates. Our award-winning work speaks for itself. We deliver transformative change. Ready to see your impact grow? Book a session and let's get started at agreatidea.com. That's agreatidea.com.